to another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G, and joining me is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
And today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new film, Spoiler Alert, which is going to be a very, very weird experience for me because standing in the room where I'm recording this right now is a life-size cardboard cutout of Jim Parsons from Big Bang Theory. So it's going to be very, very weird doing a review with the actor kind of looking at me. But spoiler alert, interesting title, but it fits because this is basically a movie where you know the outcome of this film from the very get-go. It's directed by Michael Showalter, who did the film The Big Sick a few years ago. He's been a regular person that works with Ray Romano, but he's had a very interesting career because previous to that he was also the writer of the seminal favorite American movie franchise of the Wet Hot Summer. But in recent years, he's done more serious kind of films with a comedy twinge. This film, the spoiler alert, is no different. It basically tells the story of a relationship between Michael, played by Jim Parsons, and Kit, played by Ben Aldridge. And through all the trials and tribulations of their relationship, Kit ultimately catches cancer, which I know it sounds so weird being able to talk about that, but it is basically there all the time through the film. Like the film's title suggests, this whole film is pretty much a spoiler alert. Now, mate, this is a pretty weird film, like I'm just saying. The plot is basically out there for everybody from the start. What were your feelings on that going into the film, knowing pretty much what the entire plot is before you even sat down in the cinema?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because the title of the book, that the full title of the book that this is based on, is Spoiler Alert: The Hero Dies at the End.
Yeah.
And I enjoy stories that actually that play with our understanding of continuity, or at least knowing what's going to happen. Or there was another movie called John Dies at the End, and throughout the whole movie you're thinking, okay, yeah, John's going to die at the end, and then he doesn't. But like that's kind of the thing. It's like the whole story is to kind of subvert your expectations and to present and like lead you to believe that something's going to happen, but it doesn't. In this case, I thought it helped because, I mean, for one thing, yeah, fucking I hate cancer, you know, like, yeah, cancer sucks. And I haven't even been affected by it as much as countless others have, but still, I hate it so much. But, and this movie, I think it perfectly captures the hopelessness that you feel when you're dealing with somebody somebody close to you has cancer and is going through this kind of treatment, and the fact that the movie, it starts pretty much at the end, it flashes all the way back to the beginning, and just shows the build up of this relationship, and then the diagnosis, and then basically the whole the fact of how hopeless you feel, and like seeing somebody go through this. That's it. The movie did such a great job at doing that, and I think because of the tactic of how the narrative device of basically telling you how the movie ends before it's even started, I think that really helped. Like you weren't thinking, okay, yeah, there's going to be some final cure at the end. It's going to go into remission. It's like, no, you know it won't. And that's it's horrible. It kind of reminded me a little bit of a completely different movie, but reminded me a little bit of Irreversible as well, because that was a movie about something really horrible happening, and the fact that the movie was told in reverse means that you know that the perpetrator of it was never caught.
Yeah.
And so then, like after like the horrible event that happens, it makes the rest of the movie so much more hard to sit through. because of that. And I think that they did a really great job here, and it's got some great performances in it as well. I know that this is a movie that was really personal to Jim Parsons, and that's why he really wanted to make this film. And yeah, I think it did a really good job. There are a couple of little character things that I wasn't really that crash hot on, a few narrative devices throughout it that I wasn't that big of a fan of. But overall, I think it did for the story that I wanted to tell. I think it did a very good job in pushing those emotions through. What did you think of it, David? Because I know you're somebody who's also been really affected by cancer.
Yeah, it was an interesting film. Like I wondered how it was going to go, knowing the plot from the start. I went through a similar experience recently with What's Love Got to Do with It, the new Shakira Kapoor film, because the trailer basically gave away the ending of the film. But what I found with that film was that it had enough in the film to make that... I said in my review that I knew the destination, but the film did enough to make the journey to that destination pleasurable. And I think this film does exactly the same thing. But I do still have a major problem with this film. Everybody knows that Jim Parsons is doing all he can at the moment to try and cement himself a career outside of Big Bang Theory. The poor guy basically spent, I think, 12 years of his life playing...
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, playing a character who regularly has been voted as in the top 10 or even in the top 2 or 3 of the most popular soap/sitcom characters of all time. Not only did he play a character that everybody loved, but it was a character that was very, very unique. It was basically a character with autism and OCD that, while it wasn't always mentioned in the show, it was very, very obvious. So that made that character very, very unique. And I thought it was kind of interesting because Michael, that Jim Parsons plays in this film, has some of those personality quirks of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. Like, yeah, he's not knocking on the door and going, penny, penny, penny 3 times when he's going through doorways, but he's completely obsessed by pop culture and TV. Like, he's actually a TV writer in it, and that stems from his relationship with his mother when he was younger. When he wants his safe space in his mind, he goes back to his family being a sitcom, and he's totally obsessed by Smurfs to the point where he's kind of embarrassed to show Kit his home because it's covered in Smurfs at the start of the film. And it's kind of like, and it's weird because I think Jim Parsons does an amazing job in this film, because he does play a character that's going on a real emotional journey, but I just find it kind of weird that he accepted to play a character that has Sheldon-like personality traits when he's trying to break away from that. But yeah, I think that made it kind of weird, but I still really, really liked Jim Parsons' performance in this film. And there's little things in there, like you and I talked about it afterwards, where there's times when Kit is supposed to be really, really sick with cancer and it's not believable. Like, you can tell that they've just put like a bald cap on him, or like he's still got hair growing on his face and stuff like that. That he just doesn't look sick.
Yeah, that's a problem.
There's times in this movie where I'm guessing because of time constraints, where he wasn't able to go and do a Christian Bale and lose a massive amount of weight to play the character and stuff like that. So it's an interesting film because I did feel like it took me on a journey, and I did feel for these characters and what they were going through, but sometimes the believability of it was kind of hampered from the fact that it felt like the film almost went into soap territory. And I'm not meaning the flashbacks for the character of Michael. I'm meaning that at times it kind of felt like I was watching an episode of Sex and the City or something like that.
Yeah, I that was something that kind of bothered me throughout the movie. But Kit, Ben Aldridge's character. I think, as you say, because it was probably he had other filming commitments that he was tied to. He might not have been able to do a full transformation for this film. I mean, the very next day after we saw this, we saw him in Knock at the Cabin, where he's supposed to be playing a perfectly healthy man, and so obviously the movies weren't made that close together, but like the movies were made so close that he wouldn't have been able to completely change his appearance. He wouldn't have been able to go full anorexic and look like he's completely at death's door. But that does kind of hurt this movie in that way. It was just something that bothered me, that I believe you only see him, the entire second half of the movie is about his basically the cancer and the radiation therapy and the chemotherapy, all that just racking his body. And he just does, he's still, and this is something that, it wasn't just me, I wasn't the only one that was saying this, a lot of other people said this, but there were still parts where he looked healthier than Jim Parsons.
Yeah.
And that's probably not a good thing. So that was something that bothered me. But something that was believable, though, I think, especially like really early on, was their interactions between Michael and Kit.
Yeah.
I thought that, like, when they first meet, it's not, I mean, in some ways you'd see, because Kit just seems to be this like perfectly chiseled man, and Michael isn't. Michael's somebody with body issues, and he used to be a fat kid, and so he's too embarrassed to take off his shirt, even though now he's lost all this weight. He's just embarrassed by his body, and so in some ways, like you could look at it and feel like this is like the gay version of a that Kit just seems to be the gay version of a manic pixie dream girl, like the perfect woman that schlub like Seth Rogen or those kind of characters meet. But the interactions between them were just so believable, and so that the initial parts of their relationship, I thought were done really well. It really helped cement that kind of relationship, and that's important because the movie, there's one hell of a time skip in this movie, which I think really that wasn't. Yeah, I didn't really like that. Like you see the first few, basically you see them meet, you see the first few weeks, maybe months of their relationship, and then there's almost an instant time skip for like 12 years.
Yeah.
And they're in a completely different place, like as far as their relationship goes, after that time skip, and it turns into a completely different movie after that. But yeah, I didn't really like that time skip. What did you think?
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. I think there's some awkward moments in this film. Unlike you, I love those scenes when they first met, and that kind of blossoming relationship, even up to the point where, like, whose house are we going to be at tonight? Because one's reluctant to have the other at the house, and the other lives with a housemate and stuff like that. I love that kind of thing because that was so natural. One of the things I did kind of find weird, I know you haven't seen the other film, I found it kind of weird early on how their meeting and their personalities were so similar to the two guys in Bros that we saw last year, where it was the same thing. There was like the kind of insecure kind of guy meeting this guy that he expects is going to be the chiseled superhero, all sports guy, and then finds no, he's actually very, very different to how he looks, kind of thing. I found that kind of weird. Like, these two films would have been in production at the same time, so I'm not suggesting anything there, and of course it's based off a novel, but it is kind of weird, like, how similar those two relationships and the characters were at the very, very start. But, yeah, I liked all that part, and I almost wondered if they needed to have that time jump being so dramatic. Like, I know it, and I don't want to spoil this because this is one part that's not really looked at in the trailer or in any of the literature about the film, but there's a moment that they, of course, wanted the audience to know about, but it just seems so dramatic. Like, I think I could kind of accepted it more if they were skipping like a year here and 2 years there to build to that moment, but it was just, it was so dramatic. And for me, by the end of it, what was saving this movie was how natural the earlier scenes were, because I didn't like some of those scenes after that time jump.
Yeah, I definitely think that the movie really comes into its own in the second half, like when it actually is dealing with the as good as it's kind of funny. It's like, as good as the interactions, as believable as the relationship is early on, the movie itself really kind of comes into its own in the second part, where it's about the journey, their cancer journey.
Yeah.
I think it really, once it turns into that, it a lot of the obviously a lot of the comedy, a lot of the wackiness, all that, like, that goes out of it, but it definitely, it becomes a lot more of a hard hitting film after that, and I think that it really, I think a lot of that is a lot of that was heightened because of how good that first half of the movie was.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny. It's like, I like the second half better, but it wouldn't have been anything. Like, you wouldn't have cared about the characters as much if it hadn't been for how good that first part was handled, how realistic their interactions were.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'm kind of curious to know what you thought. What did you think of Jim Parsons' performance and the casting in his film?
Yeah, at times it is. I kind of wonder if they were going for, if they're going a little bit more for an unreliable narrator part, because at times it is a little hard to see a character like Kit being able to go with a character like Michael, because I mean this story, like Jim Parsons' character, this story, it's really from Michael's perspective, and his perspective of Kit, that he's this chiseled, amazingly handsome, great guy, and so, like I said, it is a little bit it just, they seem like a bit of an odd couple together, you know. I do think I agree with what you're saying about how it was interesting that Jim Parsons would choose a role like this, where it really does have, it's more like a more dramatic Sheldon. Yeah. Like, it's actually kind of like what Sheldon was acting like. I actually was thinking this when watching the movie, that the character of Michael is very similar to how Sheldon was in the pilot episode of Big Bang Theory. Like he wasn't quite as over the top as the character became as it went on,
and what it was like in the last season too, where I probably shouldn't use this word, but after Sheldon gets married, it kind of almost feels like he's tamed a little bit. Like some of his more obscure behaviors have been knocked out of him. So yeah.
But I think it was good that because Jim Parsons is an actor that I do like seeing in things. Like, we've only seen him in a handful of other things, and I guess it was, in some ways, it was a little disappointing that he would play a character so similar to Sheldon. Yeah. But I do like seeing him in other movies, and I know that it is there's only so many roles for when an actor comes out in Hollywood. There's only so many roles that they can play, because I know a lot, or like audiences, there's, for whatever reason, they just can't. Very often, I think audiences can't take an openly gay actor as a straight character.
Yeah.
And so I think this was a movie that was. I'd heard like the behind the scenes stuff about it. That this was a movie. The book, Jim Parsons was reading it, and it like he was just in tears, and his husband told him that he should turn it into a movie, he should option the rights for it, and yeah, so it's kind of like it's a very like a personal movie to Jim Parsons. So in some ways, I can look past the fact that it's basically like a more dramatic Sheldon that you're watching on screen.
Definitely. So, we've shared our views now on what we thought about the film. So, let's get down to the scoring of the film. What are you going to give this 1 out of 5 and why?
I'm going to give this 4 out of 5. Like I was saying, the time skip in it and the fantasy elements, the way that he views his the way that Michael views his past as some kind of a sitcom, I thought that stuff just didn't gel with me.
Yeah.
But just how believable and realistic the characters' interactions was, and just how hard hitting the whole journey was of these two people dealing with cancer. As I said, it's something that really hits hard for me, and I think that this movie did such a good job of relaying that in the film, and even the whole concept of basically knowing how the movie ends before you go into it. I think that actually added to that feeling of hopelessness that you have going into it. So yeah, 4 out of 5 for me.
Okay, well, I'm going to go a little bit lower, actually, because it did kind of annoy me that it went into that, like, soapy kind of feel after the time jump, so I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. I love the naturalness of the relationship and everything at the start, like I said. I just had a little bit of issues with it going a little bit soapy, kind of. I know I said this in the last episode about last film, but it kind of went into Days of Our Lives territory a little bit, and like I said before, not the flashbacks. I'm not meaning them. I know they were supposed to be that style, but there was a couple of scenes in there where, look, there were some moments in there that I teared up. I will admit that I started to cry at one point because there was such a touching moment between a father and a son that I thought was so well performed. But I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. There was a couple of little things in there I thought that just dragged this film back a little bit to what it should have been, which was a little bit of a pity, but that's how it is. But that's it for this episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I've been Dave G, and I should reiterate those scores: 4 from Kyle and 3 from me. But for now, I've been Dave G.
And I've been Kyle.
And that's it for this episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. We'll be back very, very soon with another episode.